Welcome back. Steve Price with you. Terry and James have moved on. I'm sure they'll be back with Peter next week. Overnight, the French government has descended into, you can only call it chaos. National Assembly backing a motion of no confidence against the government. They ousted the Prime Minister Michel Barnier, something that has not happened in 60 years. Now, this puts massive pressure on President Emmanuel Macron to employ special measures so that a technocratic government can actually continue to keep the country afloat, with the hope that they then can find someone that both sides of politics can agree on to become the new Prime Minister. Joining me now, great to catch up with our new correspondent, the Australian's UK correspondent, Sophie Elsworth. Great to see you, Soph.
Nice to see you, Steve.
I know it's France, but how did even the French get to this position? You can sort of understand it maybe in Italy, but the French, what happened?
Well, it's really serious, Chris. Obviously, on the world stage, Germany and France are the biggest economies in the EU. And now they've got this absolute disaster unfolding. And just days ahead of US President-elect Donald Trump coming over to France for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Basically, the Prime Minister tried to push through a budget without a vote, and that caused this upheaval. It's caused his toppling. And now there's calls for President Emmanuel Macron to also go. He's addressing France this evening, European time, so it's morning here. So this is an absolute disaster on the world stage, and the EU has to look strong. And at the moment, it's not looking like that at all. And that will cause tension, particularly with the US, because as we know, President-elect Donald Trump is also very sceptical of the EU. So this is a very bad look to show that one of the strongest forces in the EU is very shaky at the moment.
Yeah, you'd have to think you'd have to blast Macron out of that job. It'd be very difficult to get rid of him. You're in the UK now, and obviously things there, we look from afar from Australia, and some of the things that happen in places like the UK and the US, I've always been of the view that 2-3 years down the track, they probably happen in our own country. Some of the climate insanity in that country is just extraordinary. Now, petrol cars, let's talk about petrol cars. I'm a huge petrol car fan. I'm a petrol head. It's been reported the number of petrol cars on UK roads has reached its peak, with the expectation that numbers are going to fall dramatically in coming years with people going electric. Have you had a sense yet, and I know you've only been there a couple of weeks, that there are a lot, you're in London, but are there a lot of electric cars around the joint?
There are, Chris. I mean, outside where I'm living in central London, there's an actual space on the side of the road only for electric vehicles to be charged. There are a lot of electric vehicles on the road, but remembering I'm here living in central London, you've got to go out beyond central London. There's a lot of people who cannot afford them. And there's also penalties for the companies if they sell beyond the amount of petrol cars that they're allowed to sell. So there's severe penalties of £15,000 per car they sell over the threshold. Now, they're trying to obviously phase them out. 80% of cars, I think the figure is 80% of cars sold here by 2030 will be electric. That is the goal. But they need the infrastructure, and we are seeing car manufacturers here really hurting, laying off staff because they can't, create enough cars for the demand. There's still a lot of people here, Steve, that want, the petrol vehicles.
Yeah, and look, I think of a place like London. I've been there plenty of times. I just wonder, there's so many people living in apartments. Where do you charge them anyway?
Well, that's right. That's exactly right, Steve. Look, where I'm living, there's lots of apartment blocks. As you know, London's very congested. And so where do they put them? A lot of people don't have cars here. So there's so many issues. And I think the government has tried to enforce this too quickly. It's now having repercussions. And whether or not they will reach that target by 2030 now looks as though that is, quite unlikely.
You can't imagine it would happen. Sophie, great to catch up with you. Thank you very much for that.